Folks, and welcome to our game. Myself, Shane Stibbs, and joined as ever by Michael Verney. Big weekend of GAA coming again. To be fair, a couple of weeks ago, we were pretty much buzzing for the All-Ireland football quarterfinals. Really let us down. But the semi-finals wouldn't do it to us as well, would they?
Well, maybe we built the quarterfinals up too much. Maybe there's less hype around this weekend, and they'll, deliver a bit of a surprise to us. And maybe there'll be a big shock, or maybe there'll be two epics. Obviously, two kind of very, very strong favourites on paper. But, games aren't won on paper. So hopefully there'll be plenty of intrigue and plenty of drama. What do we get in the quarterfinals? Realistically, 1 out of 4 kind of delivered. And that maybe wasn't on quality, it was more on drama. But hopefully we get plenty of both between Saturday and Sunday. And the Tailteann Cup final thrown in there for good measure as well, which is a tricky enough game to call too. Hopefully we get a couple of decent games.
Yeah, we've got Kieran Carey coming up in the show as well. We're going to be doing a bit of a Hurler of the Year shortlist with him. Myself and Michael there are going to pick our early All-Stars. With Kieran also, we're going to do a bit of an All-Ireland lead in what's it like that week and a half heading into an All-Ireland. We're going to talk about plenty of other things as well, ranking the top 4 goalkeepers of those left. And 36 and counting says, be great to see a Monaghan Derry final, but it might just set football back years. Such would be the negativity on show. P.S. Verney, just a reminder, the Twitter message I sent you on Monday after the show. Not really sure what that's about.
I can tell you what that's about. So in the 2022 season in review, I don't know what the conversation was exactly, but I went back and looked at it, and it was like, basically, you have committed to wear a black and amber Kilkenny jersey into the Tipperary County final if Kilkenny win the 2023 All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. And this is a fact because I went back and looked at the clip, and you actually agreed to it, just like I agreed to get a mullet or a mohawk if Offaly won the under-20. So you've agreed to it in principle a year ago. You didn't think it would happen, and now it's one step away from happening. So if it does happen, you're going to have to on you're from Upper Church Dunban or something like that going into the county final.
Come on, Upper Church. Tom OKane has given his predictions already. He says Dublin 125, Monaghan 16, Kerry 116, Derry 15. That's probably along the lines of how a lot of people are talking at the moment. People are expecting the Dubs to win comfortably enough, and that Kerry will just edge out Derry, but it'll be a bit more of a low-scoring game. Definitely worth talking about is Willie Maher has been confirmed as the Laois manager next year. Obviously, this year was his first year. Probably would have liked to go a little bit further in the Joe McDonagh Cup. Didn't get to the final. But maybe there's an element of a year to get your feet under the table. Now let's see what you can really do in 2024.
Yeah, they definitely would have been disappointed they weren't in around the final stages. Even just getting to the final kind of with the way it is at the moment, even if you're beaten, you get a flavour of where you're at when you play that preliminary quarter-final as Offaly got earlier on this year. It was a realistic flavour of where they're at. And I know Willie was disgruntled over the last round of fixtures and feeling maybe that Offaly didn't exactly help them out in their quest to get through to the final. So I'm sure they'll be out to right a few wrongs next year. As well as that, Mickey Graham has gone from Cavan as well. 5 years with Cavan. Provided both him and David Power now are both gone after both kind of leading Tip and Cavan to the promised land on that same day. Was it November? Yeah, was it November 11? No,
I think it was. Yeah, it was
November 11. One of the great GAA days, an unbelievable day. And Brian Dowling has stepped away from the Kilkenny Camogie setup as well after I think 5 years. I think he has 2 All-Irelands there as well. So it's kind of now to be a lot of lads either being confirmed for next year or lads kind of walking away from next year. So even though we're kind of winding down towards the end of the inter-county season, there's a hell of a lot of things going on here, and how you're going to go next year. A lot will depend on what business you do over the next couple of months, what players you get on board, what management team you get on board, what coach you get on board as well. So although it'll quieten down in the county season from the end of July onwards, it's a very, very busy time still.
What do you reckon will be the appetite for some team, whether it's club, county, whatever, to get somebody like Brian Dowling, who's done really well with Kilkenny in Camogie? They had lost 3 All-Ireland finals in a row when he took over, and then he took them to the promised land. Do you think a county team would go with him, or would there be some snobbishness because it was Camogie? Because you'd imagine there are those attitudes in some places.
I wouldn't have thought so. He's been heavily involved with Lochtons with a lot of their underage teams. I think he managed him to win a minor that maybe Mikey Butler might have been involved in as well. I'd see probably a high-end club, or if he doesn't stay involved with his own club, either a high-end club, or something like that. I'd say would probably go after him, and maybe a Kilkenny underage setup, be it minors, 20s, or been involved maybe there somewhere as well. Get a kind of flavour into that. But I don't think he'll be idle. If he wants to be busy, I think he'll be kept pretty busy. Funny enough, Shane, I was just speaking about busyness. I was chatting to Mickey Donnelly yesterday, who's a down selector, and he was just chatting about Conor Laverty, and it got me thinking, like, is there a busier man? Full stop. Like he just gave a kind of flavour of some of the things that he's actually doing. And he just said about Laverty, he just said there's a wee bit of magic with him. There's no point in saying any different. He's a very impressive man. It's no secret that he's very busy. He's a busy man. Jesus, he has his fingers in a lot of pies. He's playing club football with Kilcoo. He's a successful sheep farmer. He's a house full of cubs, so he's 5 boys at home. He's a couple of coffee trucks on the road. He's a busy guy, but his passion and desire for football, I've never seen anything like it. As well as that, he's the down under 20 manager. He's the down senior manager. He's still playing with Kilcoo to a really, really high level. And he's all this other stuff going on. They often say if you want something done, ask a busy person. They don't get much busier than that now. Mickey Donnelly actually said that Laverty could probably still play if the situation was different. He could probably still play with Down or offer something if he said if him or Marty Clark maybe took the reins instead of him. But maybe that might be a bridge too far to be player manager or something as well. But just a phenomenal to be able to balance all that. And I think the way he does it with the kids, Mickey was saying, is he generally brings them all to training. So that's probably a bit of daddy time there as well, and exposing them to a county setup and just getting them kicking balls back and stuff like that.
Sure, what else are you going to do with him? You have to just bring them in there. I remember bumping into him, I'm not sure, it was a few years ago now. I was just walking in around town going in through Trinity, and there he was. He was a GAA officer in there. I'm not sure if he has any link up with them anymore, but he'd gone from either having the massive beard to no beard or the other way around. And he said hello, and I didn't even recognize him for a minute. And I had to be like, what? Yeah, very impressive indeed. A few more comments coming in. Tom OKane says, the all-star goalkeeper, Owen Murphy, saved versus Clare. I mean, we are going to come back to that. We'll come back to that in a little bit. Shane, in your opinion, who will be the hurler of the year? Conor Whelan, TJ Reid, Aaron Gillan. We'll come back to that again in a few minutes. But
we might leave that for Kieran.
Where do you want to start here? Will we talk about how it's a big country for old men? And we often hear about it's no country for old men. But the amount of old lads that are, in relative terms, that are lining out this weekend is quite impressive. Now, viewers out there, who's the greatest old lad in GAA history at inter-county level? And then in club level as well, if you want. But the key thing is why, what moment? Michael, do you want to go through some of the names of the players?
Yeah, it's phenomenal, really, because we're kind of told now probably 32 or 33, and that's it, at county level. And listen, I don't think we're particularly guilty of it, but a lot of people are guilty of once a fella hits 30 and plays a bad game, he's like, is he coming back next year? Is this his last year? There's an awful lot of pressure on. I know Patrick Horgan was talking about that recently, but like looking at the teams that are playing this weekend, so with Monaghan, you have the Hughes brothers, Kieran and Darren, both well in their mid-50s. Carl O'Connell is 35.
Right.
Mid-50s, sorry, mid-30s, apologies. Carl O'Connell, he's ever so slightly older than Manzi, who's still absolutely flying with Monaghan, obviously coming in off the bench. Christy McCaig is 34 today, I believe, and he's going to have a big job ahead of him at the weekend. James McCarthy, similar. I think he's 33. Mick Fitzsimons is 35. Cluxton is in his 40s. Dean Rock is early 30s as well, and maybe edging towards the exit door. But there's some amount of key players there. I kind of find it amusing at times, even in club setups, that get the young lads through, and that's great. Don't get me wrong. You need a good conveyor belt of young fellas coming through. But what are they without an old head showing them the way, really, a lot of the time? And like a young lad that's a real good forward, real good on the ball, what is he without an old fella doing all the cute stuff to create space for him and maybe hand him out the ball? And I'm not saying it's like that at county level, because you can't just plant the lad centre forward and say, we're going to lob ball down on top of you and that's all you do. It's different at county level. You have to be still mobile in that. but that's a fair list of guys that are still, I'd say, excelling. Like, they're not surviving at county level. Generally, the vast majority of them are excelling, and they're going to all have a massive say in who gets through to the All-Ireland football final at the weekend.
And actually, in terms of like having older lads still playing on teams, like, it's learning by osmosis for the lads around them. Like, you can't tell a young lad, what he should be doing, just, in the cold light of day. It's kind of, you have to nearly show them when you're out on the field, or as they do something wrong, you're explaining exactly like in mid-flow, whereas it's very different afterwards. Do you remember that moment when you did whatever and whatever? So having that person beside you, even showing you the example of how it should be done, that sort of stuff is important. So sometimes you see a load of old lads are shoved out the door at one go, and then who's replacing them? Because you're asking the young lads to not only be the players playing on the wings, but the leaders in the centre. And sometimes I think that's a little bit short-sighted. But if, let's say, of those 4 teams, if 5 substitutes, and I know you can use 6, but if 5 substitutes were used for each team this weekend, you'd have 80 players playing. We've named 10 lads there who are probably all 33 and more. And in some cases, maybe even, 41 in the case of Stephen Cluxton. So 1/8 of the players, just over 12%, could be players that are serious veterans. And I think that's very, very impressive.
Oh, God, it is.
More
Yeah,
than
definitely.
team, like.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what you were saying there is, like, see all the lads Desi Farrell has brought through. Just say, like, the likes of, would say, Key Murphy or Darren Newcombe or these boys, just say they were coming through and McCarthy had gone and Cluxton wasn't there and Rock was gone. Like, their learning curve is very, very sharp. Like, you're learning, you're really, really been thrown in at the deep end. Whereas when you have lads kind of guiding you through games almost, and that's the way it is. It's almost like, and maybe it's not like that at county level, but it's definitely like that at club level, where a more experienced player is nearly taking you by the hand and showing you exactly what to do in certain situations. And it's funny you say that. It's one thing saying to a lad from the sideline, "Oh, why didn't you do this when you were there?" It's a different story when, if you're on the pitch with him, you can actually say it to him there and then. And they get it. I think they get it an awful lot quicker because you're out on the pitch, and you can see an awful lot more when you're out on the pitch as well. I love playing Senior B with Burnout at the moment. There's lads playing, what's this young lad came on the other day that was 17, like half my age. And you're just trying to give them anything that you've learned down through the years. Now, no more than when we were young lads, you don't pick it all up straight away. And sometimes you have to go through your own experiences to get to that point where the penny kind of drops or whatever. But you do learn bits and pieces. You learn maybe how to survive, how to protect yourself, that type of thing. I love nothing more than actually when an older fella on the opposition team maybe picks on one of the young fellas because he thinks he can get him. And he's just, I don't know, there's probably nothing I take more umbrage with than that. I don't know. I'd never go start on a young fella on the other team and see him as weaker and like that. I'd start maybe with a lad my own age and maybe round the ground with him. But there's nothing like it, and you'd go into them straight away and you'd have them by the scruff of the neck, because it's I don't know. It's not that it's sacrilege, but it's sacrilege as a player to see a young fella been bullied or manhandled or someone trying to manhandle him. Oh, it is 100%. It is, yeah. And we probably all know different players that do it. But it definitely wouldn't be something I'd like, and it's something that I take fairly great offence to now.
And you were telling me just before the show that you were bearing down on goal the other day. Did you show the young lads how to finish?
Well, it's like this. It's great. It's like someone said it to me after. It's great, like, talking on this show. Oh, he should have hit the ball into the ground, or he should have done whatever. Kieran, I was just saying to Shane off air, I got a ball through from centre forward the other day, about 35 yards out, and I just had a head up the steam. And I'd kind of beaten the centre back, and I'm a corner back by trade, and my eyes were lighting up. I knew exactly where I wanted to put the ball. I had it all in my head. I was coming down the left post, and I was going to hit it bouncing into the right corner. And sure, I ended up hitting the ball over the bar. Never even it got within an arse's roar of the ground. I was lucky to get a score out of it. But it's funny talking. You can talk and talk about what lads should do, but when you're actually out there in the white heat championship and you actually have to go and do it, it's a little bit different now. Me and Shane are a bit different than you, Kieran. You were able to go and do it in the white heat championship the whole time, in fairness to you.
Come here, at least, Mike, you raised the flag. That's the most important one.
There you go, yeah. At least I made the umpire make a little gesture down to his right or left.
Yeah,
or whatever. Yeah.
Kieran, we were talking there about like when you're an older player that you try and almost coach young lads on the field, and that kind of helps bring them on. Is there any player that when you first came on the scene that here was a veteran lad who took you under the wing, and while you were out on the pitch, he sort of helped develop you, or have you done that in subsequent years?
Oh, without a doubt. And I suppose I would have been very lucky, Shane, when I started my career. I was kind of going on, I was involved with Patrick Swell and Frankie Nolan. Now, Limerick last All Ireland was in 73. So Frankie Nolan was involved in that. Leonard Enright was playing. David Punch was playing. Sean Foley was playing. They were all in their late 30s and 40s. So, it was a fairly humble experience to go into the dressing room with all of these guys. Yeah, and thankfully I knew my place. I would have been quiet. I would have been learning my trade, saying nothing. But, Frankie Nolan definitely would have put me under his wing. Leonard Enright, I started off in goals and he would have been full back. So he would have also brought me under his wing for whole of that, for that whole period while I was in goals. Yeah, and I would have been extremely mindful myself, whether it was with Limerick or Patrick Swell. Anyone that was new or anyone that was struggling, I would have always had a little whisper in their ear. And, that just went with the territory for me. And I suppose that's what I've seen, that's what I experienced, and, that's what I tended to give away as a player.
Was it the sort of stuff whereby they'd give you tips on how to play a certain position, or more or less telling you, don't worry about this lad coming in here, I'll protect you? What sort of stuff were we talking about?
Yeah, I can remember playing a city final, my first city final side in goals, my first 2 puck outs. Went out about 35 yards. So the manager, Phil Bennett, roared in, "Hi, Phil, you take the next one." And Bennett walked back to me. "I'll be twice as bad," he said to Misfortune. But like, they just had a way of kind of making it comfortable and easing your way into it. Now, Shane, I was only Gassoon at the time. I was only 17 years of age, and I was going in there with men. So I had a good few of them coming at me. But I do remember Leonard Enright, really kind of making it comfortable for me. And as Mike said there when he's giving the example when he's on the ball up front, it's all about, in my opinion, I suppose, being composed, not allowing your emotions, I suppose, to kind of dictate your play, because if your emotions are at play, then you tend to kind of play a bit nervous, make a few extra mistakes. But bottom line, if you're a bit composed, 9 times out of 10, when you're composed and you usually empty the tank, even if you're underperforming, good things will always happen.
And Kieran, another thing is are there any moments that stick with you personally? Like Verney's there talking about skewing a ball over the bar when he was close to goal and he was in. Are there any moments like that still stick with you where you were like in a certain position to do something and, it went completely awry on you?
I try to think now. I suppose it mightn't have been. There's one that sticks out now, right, to be fair. And it might have been scoring. I used to get a great kind of kick from, believe it or not, I suppose, creating scores more than getting scores. I got a kick from that, even though I would have got a few points, but I got just a great kick of kind of making a score, creating a score. Yeah, one particular incident does, and I was after getting a bad belt in here to the eye. I was just kind of late in the tackle, and I mistimed it, missed his hurley, and he followed through, and the pole of the hurley caught me here. Needless to say, Shane, it never happened to me again.
Michael, just said about that incident stuck with you from last week. Are there any incidents in bigger games where you had a moment and that moment sticks with you because maybe you could have done something different?
Well, the time we got the scutcheon from John Milan definitely would definitely stick out.
But that was 25 minutes of pain. I'm talking about a single moment.
There's nothing jumping out at the minute. I'll probably think of something in a minute. I just wanted to throw something to Kieran about the wheel turning then. When you went back to play intermediate with Limerick, you were the experienced kind of codger, and you were the one, I remember you saying to me, you were the one that was kind of getting on the ball, and you made a bit of an all-star, our Tom Condon by all accounts. And Tom has no problem in saying that he probably got called into the Limerick squad as a result of that. But you were playing full back. You were doing the simple stuff. You were giving him the ball, and he was kind of clearing the ball up the field and giving it the big one or whatever. But that's kind of the way the wheel turns, isn't it? When you're the young fella, the old fella is doing the hard yards and letting you and giving you the ball and saying, "Go on, open up the legs." Then the wheel turns. You're winning the ball, and you're letting the young fella do the hard yards, and you're maybe doing the smart stuff. If you get me.
Yeah, you bang on, and you're right. And Richie McCarthy might have been the other cornerback for a while too. And funny enough, when you're going into a kind of scene like that, and you've gone through the Limerick seniors, you know, I was acutely aware now, right, to be humble, and there's no big shots here. And I kind of made a decision to kind of keep that quiet. And most of the talking, I probably would have done it with the hurling on the field with the lads. And exactly what you said there, kept it nice and simple. But there's a little flick out to Tom Condon or Richie McCarthy, without saying it, away you go, 'tis years now.
And it's funny as well, how the wheel turns. When you were the 17-year-old, the old fellas within the club are probably collecting you or bringing you to a match when you're, you know, just say you're going playing fucking Sarsfields from Cork or something like that in a challenge game. They're collecting you. The wheel turns, you end up in your 30s. You're collecting the young fellas. It's amazing. That's kind of like the circle of the club almost, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And that's the beauty about the GAA, Mike and Shane. You know, it's always about repetition. And irrespective of, you know, whatever county you're with, you know, everything starts and everything finishes with your club.
And there's a question here from Richard Hogan, and this was about your assist. Did Kieran provide the assist for Damon Quigley's goal in 1994?
I'm fairly sure he did, off the left-hand side, I think.
Shane, I don't know, it's kind of a blackout to me.
I'm fairly sure he did. That was a brilliant goal, wasn't it?
No, to be fair, my memory there, I think Damon came away at about 2-4, 2-5. And I don't want to be too hard on him here now, but he could have probably got about 4-8.
There's another question saying, who's the oldest fella you ever met on the field?
The oldest fella I would have ever met in the field.
Yeah.
The oldest fella, possibly. I think there was a fella sent to forward for Waterford one time, Chunky O'Connor, he was calling him. He was kind of a big, kind of a Gonzella kind of a block, just thrown in there to kind of upstep the whole old thing with a pair of shoulders. I think it might have been him. My memory serves me right. But Shane, at the end of the day, as a player, you know, age doesn't even come into it. If you've been into County Jersey on it, then you're reaching, you've all the credentials ticked. You know, it's inevitable you have it, irrespective of your age. And looking at the players now, even, you know, look at Tony Brown, the longevity of him. Look at Reid, the way he's gone. You know, the modern player, if they mind themselves, look after themselves mentally and physically, you know, provided they've good old genes. Now, not everybody can do it. Someone's legs can go extremely quick. But 9 times out of 10, if you mind yourself and look after yourself off the field, you know, you can stay going to a good 35 years of age. That's provided you mind yourself.
Just on that, Kieran, your old teammate Pat Heffernan is still going strong. I think he's living over. I think he's living over in the UK. He played a game with his own young fellas there in recent weeks. He talked out. He's 53. But that's some going to still be going at that age. And I know you're still playing Masters football now as well. But it's great. Like once, if you can move at all, you should stay going as long as you can.
Of course you should, because come here, it is going to be huge benefits in it for you mentally and physically. Yeah, I saw a clip about Pat and I phoned him, I had a good chat with him. No, he's based in Mallow, but he went over for that match.
He went over to play the match.
He did. He went over for that, himself and his dad. They went over that morning, played the match and came back that night. And, you know, Pat would be huge into that kind of family and would be huge in getting the opportunity playing with his son. So, it was a super achievement, and it's pretty rare what he's after doing.